What exactly does that mean?
That's right. Often, people will get the wrong idea, like, I'll provide assistance in the bedroom.
No, we're not going to go there. Sex. Sex is something we see every day through media, magazines, and among other places. And often, it's something that is not talked about, because it can lead to this sense of embarrassment, shame, and it silences the conversation. No, sexuality is important. It's something we need to talk about. We need to face how it impacts us, how it impacts our self-esteem, how it impacts our daily lives. This is why I'm so excited to have an opportunity to chat with Bethany Gehman, a sexuality educator. She is not afraid to discuss these topics.
Yes, you're sex positive. Oh no, I have a disease. Sex positivity is not a disease. When you change their diapers and change their clothes, always ask for permission. That space, then they feel comfortable sharing their pronouns. The term queer is an umbrella term that covers different identities within the LGBTQIA+.
Now, the community has looked to you as a brave person who's broken the mold and barriers. That's how we look at you. That's how I look at you. We do admire your willingness to go there, where many wouldn't go in the past. We're seeing that your services are being requested more frequently and you're giving more presentations. So what's that experience been like for you, where you're meeting different people of different ages?
Yes, I'm just amazed and sometimes disappointed whenever I meet an older person who asks basic questions that they could have asked a long time ago, like when they were in 5th grade. Our deaf community has been really deprived of that education. Wow. Maybe it was due to barriers being placed in the mainstream system or schools for the deaf that don't have the proper design and ASL-centered sex education. It's been really inspiring to see people really starting to have that discussion and feeling a sense of relief doing it.
Right. Me too. Yes, that's what they're saying.
Yes, exactly.
And I'm sure many people have reached out to you about what exactly does the phrase sex educator mean, right?
You're right. That happens often. People will get the wrong idea, like, I'll provide assistance in the bedroom?
No,
that's
we're not going there.
Right. No, after traveling to schools for the deaf and interpreter training programs, I've talked about the topic of sexuality. It's not just about condoms or birth control, but it also includes consent and health-related issues. Also for interpreters, they might be stumped with the translating process because the topic being presented is so personal and upfront about their bodies. We're overcoming that anxiety and becoming more comfortable.
Sex really is a large part of our lives. I mean, we see it on a daily basis. Yet, a lot of people in the deaf community don't really discuss it. Why do you think that is?
There's a strong influence from our society's expectations, as well as influence from religions and cultures. Also, for a long time, the hearing community has looked upon the deaf population as asexual isn't the right word, but that they don't need sex. They don't need sex education. So deaf people tend to be overly subtle about that topic instead of being open about it.
So there's sex versus sexuality.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the two.
Yeah. There's a lot of murkiness. Sexuality is an umbrella term that covers many different terms related to sexual identity, gender identity, and gender expression. Further down the spectrum, it includes flirting, sex anatomy, and reproductive body organs. There are many branches. Sex is one of those branches under sexuality. That's why I make it a point that I'm a sexuality educator instead of just a sex educator.
Right.
That's why I educate about a variety of different topics.
So one thing I'm curious about is your own personal experiences growing up. Was there ever a moment when you wished you could benefit more from awareness on sex?
My whole life, I grew up in the mainstream system. I grew up in a hearing family. They can sign, but they weren't able to talk about sex. I had difficulties about getting information, even in school. I remember in college, well, really high school and in college, our friends were starting to have sex. There was no open dialogue about health issues. It was more like gossip and immature conversations about sex. What I really want to talk more in depth about is how sex makes you feel and why it has such a huge impact on our lives, but no one's talking about it. Also, as a female, going through a lot of relationships, I've always focused on the other person's needs rather than my own. It's caused me to disconnect with my vagina. I think that was the beginning of my journey as a sexuality educator. I've struggled with that disconnect and I feel ashamed. I'm embarrassed by how it smells during my period. I have to worry about shaving down there and how I need to look. Watching some porn videos, I wondered, that's how my vagina is supposed to look? I remember there was some discussion about it, but nothing related to health and what it should look like. Really, it doesn't have to look a certain way. The point is, nobody's saying that we are fine the way we are.
Right. There are unrealistic expectations that we just simply can't meet. So we end up feeling imperfect. But there isn't a right way that we should look.
Right.
Right? There just simply isn't.
Right. That is such a huge impact on our self-esteem as females.
Right. Right.
There are some groups that do have serious conversations about it, but there's no accessibility. There are no interpreters, and they don't sign. I've read a lot of books, but I have that privilege of being able to read and write. But how many people have that privilege? That needs to change. That's why I started making vlogs and try and do as many as I can. We need to start talking about these topics.
What does sex positivity include? How you frame things, then there's how you talk about it, and what else is there?
So, sex positivity is talking about sex in a positive way. It's about being open, being okay about what we like, and being accepting of other people's interests. Sex positivity also includes being okay with other people who are not interested in sex. Our society has a huge expectation that everything has to be about sex. If you really look at our commercials, television shows, and other things, everything is about sex. Many people feel pressured into investing in sex. That's not necessary. For feminists, they want to be open, dress a certain way, and need to be okay with it. If I want to do that in bed, we should be fine with it. If you want to go with BDSM or kinky, that's fine. As long as there's consent, that's the key point of sex positivity. Consent and being of legal age, of course. Bestiality and pedophilia, these things are not part of sex positivity.
How can people become more confident and more comfortable to talk about sex?
Yeah, by starting a conversation. One at a time, start talking about it. At first you might be nervous, but talk about it.
I have to ask you this question. Okay, so I have some girlfriends that we can talk about everything. But when it comes to sex, everyone gets so embarrassed. We all start blushing. It has me thinking, I've got to ask you this. Did you ever feel that way? Did you ever feel embarrassed by the topic of sex? And if you did, how did you overcome that?
Yes, I have. If you could have seen me in high school and college, I was very uncomfortable talking about it. I think once I got in touch with myself, figured out what I really liked, and analyzed why this was important to me. I'm constantly talking with myself and really thinking about these things, including kinky, polysexuality, and being okay with my sexual identity. I would reach out to my close friends. They would be uncomfortable at first, but after doing it again and again, it brings us closer as friends. Sometimes I find they've experienced the same things, like it feels good and I don't feel alone.
Yes.
I remember one time I was talking about sex with a friend. It was with a man, and my friend mentioned being embarrassed by the smell. I felt the same way. After doing some research, we found that the smell in female parts is normal. Honestly, why do we expect our female parts to smell like flowers, bubblegum, and rainbows?
Flowers or bubblegum, rainbows, whatever.
Oh, please.
So what specific topics to you are considered taboo?
There's many. First, queer sex. There's not a lot of demonstrations in porn or even sex education. It's not usually discussed.
Right, it's typically from the heterosexual perspective.
Right. I feel for those who identify as gay or transsexual, they wonder, what does that mean for me? I'm attracted to different things and I'm confused with my feelings. That can cause us to disconnect with the school environment and disconnect from our peers. Another thing, masturbation.
Right, yeah.
It's openly discussed amongst men, but when it comes to women, it's not the same. I remember back in high school, people would tease each other about that. I remember thinking, yes, I do. What's wrong with that?
Own it. I mean, men, they don't think the same way. They're open about it. They think it's normal. And women don't view it the same.
Right. Really, there's so many taboo topics, especially with female sexuality.
I remember one workshop I went to of yours a while ago, and it was about how to connect with your vagina.
Right. That was actually my first workshop I gave.
I was blown away by that workshop. It did make me realize, wow. I mean, I know my vagina. I know it's there, but I've never really developed that sense of awareness and connection. So for me, it had me thinking.
Looking back, I remember when I was learning about this topic, I didn't even know there were so many parts to the vagina. It's a part of our body. We know the names of our ears, nose, mouth, teeth, etc., yet we don't know much about our vaginas.
Right, as if we have to ignore that it's there.
We're ignorant. It's a part of us. We need to know what makes it happy. We need to know what makes it angry. We're just disconnected from it. Yet, society puts so much pressure on how a vagina should appear and smell.
Right, conflicting perspectives.
Right.
So what I'm taking away from this discussion about sex positivity is that we all have our sexual needs and desires, and we need to talk about it. We need to open up about it.
Yeah. I want to add that not everyone has sexual desires or needs, and that's okay. I think it's important to emphasize that there's a whole range when it comes to needs. That's okay. We're all different.
Thank you, Bethany. As you can see, sexuality is an umbrella term. Wow. It covers a vast array of subtopics that we need to talk about and learn more about. So now I'm wondering, what topics do you want to learn more about?